I had just lost my job and needed something fast. The ad said, night security guard needed for quiet self-storage facility. Low traffic. Must be reliable. Sounded like easy money. The place was a maze of metal doors and concrete. No windows. Just endless rows of storage units under flickering lights. My job was simple: walk the grounds every hour, check that all the units were locked, and monitor the cameras in the little security shack. For the first few nights, nothing happened. I brought books, snacks, even a small radio. The cameras showed nothing but still corridors. Until the fourth night. At 2:13 a.m., one of the monitors blinked. Unit 137. The door was slightly open. That shouldn't have been possible. I grabbed my flashlight and walked over. The air felt colder near that part of the lot. The other units stood silent, but 137 had a soft creaking sound coming from inside. Not just any creaking, a rhythmic, deliberate sound, like someone slowly rocking back and forth. I shined the light into the gap. Dust floated through the beam. Inside, I could barely make out stacks of old furniture. Boxes. A child's rocking horse. And someone standing at the back. I froze. My light flickered. The figure didn't move. It was unnaturally tall, its head almost touching the ceiling. I called out, no response. The silhouette remained perfectly still, like it wasn't even breathing. Just watching. Waiting. When I stepped inside, the temperature dropped. My breath fogged in thick clouds. The metallic taste of fear filled my mouth. I raised the light again, and the figure was gone. But the rocking horse was moving, creaking back and forth with no one touching it. I backed out fast, slammed the door shut, and locked it. The moment the lock clicked, I heard what sounded like fingernails dragging across the metal from the inside. On the way back to the shack, every light along the row flickered out as I passed, plunging me into darkness for split seconds before reluctantly buzzing back to life. The next night, I told my supervisor. He laughed it off. Said Unit 137 had been empty for years. But when I checked the log, the last name on the rental was blacked out. Literally redacted. As if someone had taken a Sharpie to the system. Under the censored name was a date, June 17, 1994. Below that, a single note, do not rent. That night, the unit was open again. This time, the camera feed showed someone slowly dragging a chair to the center of the unit. Sitting. Staring straight at the door. 4 hours. The figure's face was obscured, but I could make out long, emaciated limbs. Occasionally, its head would twitch at unnatural angles. At 3:17 a.m., it stood up and walked directly toward the camera until its featureless face filled the screen. Then the feed cut out. But when I got there, nothing. Just the chair. And a child's drawing on the concrete floor that hadn't been there before. Stick figures of a family. The tallest figure had been violently scratched out with black crayon. I quit the next day. The owner didn't even seem surprised. When I handed him my keys, he just nodded and said, they never last long on the night shift. Then, almost as an afterthought, did you see them? The family? I never answered his question. But that night, I dreamed of Unit 137. In the dream, I opened the door to find a normal family scene, parents sitting on a couch, a child playing on the floor. They turned to look at me with hollow eye sockets and said in unison, we've been waiting for you to join us. I woke up drenched in sweat, the sheets twisted around me like restraints. The digital clock on my nightstand read 2:13 a.m. From somewhere in my apartment came the faint sound of a rocking horse. For weeks afterward, I kept seeing the storage facility in mundane places. Reflections in windows. Glimpses in my peripheral vision. The number 137 appeared everywhere, grocery receipts, license plates, timestamps. One night, I woke to find my bedroom door open. The hallway beyond was wrong. It wasn't my hallway anymore, it was a concrete corridor lined with metal doors. Unit 137 stood directly across from my room, its door ajar. Something inside was calling my name. I slammed my bedroom door shut and barricaded it until morning. When daylight came, my hallway was normal again. But the floor was tracked with dusty footprints that weren't mine. They led from my front door to my bedroom, and they were too large to belong to any human. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a grainy black and white photo. It was me, standing in front of Unit 137. But I never posed for that photo. My expression was wrong, a vacant smile I didn't recognize. And in the background, just behind my shoulder, was someone else. A tall figure with impossibly long arms reaching toward me. Its face was blurred, but I could make out the suggestion of too many teeth arranged in a grin that stretched beyond the confines of a human mouth. On the back of the photo was a handwritten message: "We miss you. Unit 137 is always open for you." That night, I heard a sound at my front door. Metal scraping against metal. When I checked the peephole, I saw the corridor of the storage facility stretching endlessly before me. Unit 137 directly opposite my door. I've boarded up my doors and windows. I sleep with the lights on. But sometimes I wake to find myself sitting upright in bed, my arms moving in a rocking motion I can't control. My walls have begun to look like metal. The ceiling drips concrete dust. Last night, I found a small rocking horse beside my bed. I don't remember owning one. It moves on its own. I know what's happening. The storage facility isn't just a place, it's something else. Something that finds people like me. Empty people. People with space to fill. The family in Unit 137 needs a new member. And I think I've always belonged there. There's a metal door in my bedroom now. It wasn't there yesterday. The number 137 is painted on it in what looks like dried brown paint, but I know it isn't paint. I hear the rocking horse creaking. I hear someone calling my name. I hear the door of Unit 137 opening. I think tonight I might answer. I travel a lot for work. Over time, hotel rooms all start to feel the same: beige walls, floral bedspreads, and the hum of a mini fridge in the corner. This trip was no different. I checked into a small, budget hotel off the highway. Nothing fancy, but it was clean and had decent reviews. I was only staying one night, so I didn't think much of it. The clerk barely looked up when I arrived. Just handed me the key and mumbled, "Room 214. End of the hall." His eyes had that vacant, glazed look of someone who'd seen too many travelers pass through. I should have noticed how he averted his gaze when I asked about the hotel's history. The room felt off. Hard to explain. The air was stale, carrying a faint coppery scent beneath the chemical tang of industrial cleaners. The curtains didn't fully close, leaving a sliver of darkness where the parking lot lights couldn't quite reach. But the weirdest thing was the mirror on the wall opposite the bed. It was big. Too big. Perfectly square. Set into the wall like a window. I remember pausing in front of it. My reflection looked normal, but something about the way it caught the light made me uneasy. The edges seemed darker, almost absorbing the room's dim illumination. When I moved, there was the slightest delay, imperceptible unless you were looking for it, before my reflection followed. I went about my night. Watched TV. Ate some takeout. Got ready for bed. But as I turned off the lights, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The darkness felt alive, breathing along with me. The mirror's surface seemed to shimmer in the faint glow from the parking lot outside. Around 1 a.m., I sat up, heart pounding. I'd heard something. A thump. Then a shuffle. Not just random hotel noises, this was deliberate. Rhythmic. It came from behind the mirror. I turned on the light and approached it slowly. My reflection stared back, wide-eyed. I noticed how my skin appeared sallow in the glass, how my eyes seemed darker, almost sunken. I knocked on the glass. It echoed, but not the way regular mirrors do. It sounded hollow. The vibrations lingered too long, as if traveling through an empty space. I pulled out my phone and shined the flashlight along the edges. There was a small gap between the mirror and the wall. Barely noticeable. A thin black line where darkness seeped out like ink. The beam caught something else, tiny scratch marks along the frame, as if someone had been adjusting it repeatedly from the other side. That's when I noticed fingerprints. On the inside of the glass. Smudged and desperate. Some appeared fresh, the oil still catching the light. Others had dried to a yellowish tint, layers upon layers of them marking the passing of time. I backed away. Called the front desk. No answer. Just endless ringing echoing down empty hallways. I grabbed my bag, ready to leave, but curiosity got the better of me. That terrible human impulse to confront the unknown. I used my multi-tool to pry along the edge. The mirror popped out with a sharp click, like the breaking of a seal. A rush of fetid air hit my face, the unmistakable smell of unwashed body, spoiled food, and something worse. Something organic and rotting. Behind it was a dark room. A crawlspace, maybe 6 feet wide, with a camera on a tripod pointed directly through the glass. The lens glinted in my flashlight beam like a malevolent eye. Cables, wires, food wrappers. Empty water bottles filled with dark yellow liquid. A mattress on the floor, stained with substances I couldn't identify. Someone had been living there. Watching. But that wasn't the worst of it. The walls were covered with Polaroid photographs. Hundreds of them. People sleeping, changing, showering, moments they thought were private. Some photos showed the same people night after night, as if the watcher had become fixated. Each picture was dated and labeled with detailed notes about the guests' habits and conversations. I found my own photo already pinned up. Taken just hours ago when I'd first entered the room. Below it, scrawled in jagged handwriting, knows something. Watches the mirror too closely. In the corner stood a small desk with a leather-bound journal. I flipped through it, my hands trembling. It contained entries spanning years, detailed descriptions of guests, their conversations, their nightmares murmured in sleep. The writer had theories about each person, elaborate fantasies about their lives. Some entries ended with a single red X. Those were the ones that chilled me most. That's when I heard it, movement in the wall beyond this hidden chamber. Soft, skittering sounds like fingernails on drywall. A whispered voice, too faint to make out words but carrying undeniable excitement. The watcher was returning. I ran. I drove all night, didn't stop until sunrise, my headlights cutting through dense fog as if trying to illuminate my own scattered thoughts. My phone rang twice, unknown number with the hotel's area code. I didn't answer. Later, I reported the hotel to the police. They investigated. Found evidence someone had been spying on guests for months. The hidden room connected to a network of spaces between walls, allowing access to several rooms. They discovered notebooks documenting observations of over 300 guests. Personal items collected as trophies, a hairbrush here, an earring there. A collection of room keys from various hotels across the state. They never caught him. The hotel was shut down. The owners claimed ignorance, but their nervous glances told another story. Sometimes I wonder about that night clerk, with his averted eyes and mumbled directions. Did he know? Was he protecting someone? Or was he afraid? The investigation revealed something else. 3 guests who had stayed in room 214 over the past year had been reported missing weeks after their stay. Their families received text messages and emails saying they needed to get away for a while. Police couldn't prove a connection, but I know better. And to this day, when I check into any hotel, I knock on the mirrors. I press my ear against the wall and listen for breathing on the other side. I check for gaps, for fingerprints, for that subtle wrong feeling. Just in case. Because somewhere out there, he's still watching. Still waiting. Still collecting his photographs and observations. And sometimes, when I stand before a hotel mirror, I swear my reflection smiles a split second before I do. I was adopted at birth. My parents were loving and supportive, but I always wondered where I came from. When I turned 25, I decided to look. A few weeks of paperwork and emails later, I got a name. A man named Paul Carson. He responded to my message within a day. Said he'd always hoped I'd reach out. We met at a diner halfway between our towns. He was soft-spoken, polite, and surprisingly emotional. Said he never stopped thinking about me. Claimed he gave me up because he couldn't raise a child alone. I believed him. There was something familiar about his eyes, deep-set and intensely blue. Something in the way he studied my face, as if committing every detail to memory. His hands trembled slightly when he showed me a faded photo of himself holding a baby. Me, supposedly. "You were so perfect," he whispered, voice cracking. "Not a day went by that I didn't think about you." Over the next few weeks, we got closer. He invited me to his house, a modest place in a rural area. Cozy, a bit cluttered, filled with books and old photographs. The drive there took nearly an hour, winding through dense woods until civilization faded into the rearview mirror. No neighbors for at least a mile in any direction. I remembered thinking how lonely it must be. He showed me pictures of my birth mother, who he said died young. A beautiful woman with my same nose and chin. Sarah, he called her. Said she died in childbirth. It felt like a missing piece of me was finally clicking into place. But little things started to nag at me. The way certain rooms stayed locked. How he sometimes paused mid-sentence, head tilted as if listening for something. The collection of women's clothing in an upstairs closet he quickly shut when I glanced inside, all different sizes, some styles decades old. When I asked, he muttered something about his sister staying occasionally. Then I found the door. It was in the hallway, behind a bookshelf that looked like it hadn't been moved in years. I only noticed it because I dropped my phone and it slid behind the shelf. When I pulled it away from the wall, I found the locked door with no handle. Just a keyhole, tarnished with age. I didn't say anything at first. Just noted it in the back of my mind. But the next time I came over, I brought a small screwdriver. When he went out to get groceries, I pried the lock open. It gave way with surprising ease, as if it had been recently oiled. The room was cold. There were no windows. Just a mattress on the floor, stained with dark brown patches that could only be dried blood. A metal bucket in the corner. Chains bolted to the wall. The air smelled of bleach and something underneath, something rotten and sweet. And photographs. Dozens. Of me. Taken from a distance, walking to work, sitting in the park, getting into my car. Some were old. Years old. Me at my high school graduation. Me at 16, working my first job. Me at 12 playing soccer. The oldest showed me at perhaps 7 or 8, on the playground of my elementary school. But that wasn't all. There were other photos. Other girls. Women. Some looked like me, same build, same hair color. 5 or 6 different faces, but all with a similar look. In some photos, they were clearly unconscious. In others, their eyes held pure terror. On a small table sat journals. Dozens of them, meticulously dated. I opened one at random. Inside, in neat handwriting. April 17th, she still asks about her mother. I've shown her the pictures of Sarah again. She believes me. Why wouldn't she? The resemblance is there. I chose Sarah's photo carefully from the missing persons database. No family to come looking. Perfect. My head spun. I felt sick. The walls seemed to close in. In the corner stood a medical cabinet. Inside, syringes, vials of clear liquid, surgical tools, all neatly arranged. Beside them, a stack of birth certificates. The top one had my name on it, but the details were wrong. The hospital didn't exist. The date was wrong. And the mother's name wasn't Sarah, it was Jennifer Klein. I took one photo and put the bookshelf back. When he returned, I acted normal. Said I had to leave early. He hugged me goodbye, held on a little too long. Whispered how grateful he was that I'd found him. How we were meant to be together. His fingers brushed against my neck, lingering on my pulse point. You look just like your mother, he said. All of them, really. But you're special. That night, I didn't sleep. I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's place. Filed a police report the next morning. By the time they searched his house, the room was gone. Literally, the wall had been patched, painted over. Professional work, the officer said. Would have taken days, not hours. They found nothing. No Paul Carson had ever owned the property. The deed was in the name of a shell company. The real estate records showed it changing hands every few years, but always to another corporate entity that led nowhere. The DMV had no record of him. The adoption paperwork I'd filed, suddenly gone from the system. When I called my caseworker, she had no recollection of helping me find my birth father. Said my file specifically noted both birth parents were deceased. But I still have the photo I took. The one that proves he'd been watching me my whole life. Me at 9 years old, asleep in my childhood bedroom. The camera angle was from inside my closet. I moved cities. Changed my name. Cut my hair and dyed it. Started a new life. And yet, every few months, I get an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a picture of me, taken from a distance. Me entering my new apartment. Me at my new job. Me on a date. Always from the shadows, always when I thought I was alone. And a note. Still proud of you. The others weren't nearly this clever. You're the only one who found the room. The only one who escaped. But a father's love is patient. I'll be seeing you soon, daughter. Last week, I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. Nothing was taken. Nothing was disturbed, except for my pillow. It had been moved slightly. And on it, a single blue thread from a sweater I recognized. The neighbor across the hall said she'd seen nothing, but mentioned that my father had stopped by. Such a nice man, she said. So worried about his daughter. I'm leaving tomorrow. No goodbyes, no forwarding address. This will be my 5th move in 3 years. But sometimes, in crowds, I catch a glimpse of those deep-set blue eyes. And I know it's only a matter of time before he finds me again. Because I'm not his daughter. I'm his collection. And the most terrifying part? I've done the research now. Looked into missing women across the country. There was a Sarah. And a Jennifer Klein. And all the others from the photos. All gone. All forgotten. All except me. I'd only lived in the apartment complex for about 6 months when I met Greg, my next-door neighbor. Quiet guy, early 40s, always wore the same faded hoodie and jeans. We'd occasionally nod at each other in the hallway, maybe exchange a few words about the weather. That was it. Until the night he knocked on my door. 3:07 a.m. I had been up reading, and the knock made me jump. I peeked through the peephole. It was Greg. He looked different. Pale. Wide-eyed. Sweating, even though it was chilly. Sorry, he said when I opened the door a crack. I need to tell someone. I hesitated, then let him in. He paced in my living room for a few seconds, wringing his hands. Then he said it. I don't think I'm real. I blinked. Thought he was joking. But his voice shook. I found something in my closet tonight. A box. I never put it there. Inside were pictures of me. Hundreds. Some I recognized. Others I swear are from places I've never been. With people I don't know. But I'm in all of them. Always in the background. Sometimes looking straight at the camera. He reached into his hoodie and pulled out one of the photos. It was old, yellowed. It showed a street scene, 1980s cars, old signage, and there was Greg, unmistakably, standing in the corner. "I was born in 1983, he said. I didn't know what to say. He looked exhausted. There were journals, too, he continued. Describing my thoughts. Word for word. Even things I've never said out loud. And at the bottom of the box was a note. He paused, then handed it to me. It read, "Resetting in 72 hours. Deletion scheduled. Thank you for your participation." I tried to ask more, but Greg stood suddenly. "I shouldn't have come. They'll know. They always know." He left. That was the last time I saw him. I knocked on his door the next day. No answer. The super said no one by that name ever lived there. The unit was vacant. Had been for months. But sometimes, when I walk past his door, I swear I hear whispering. And I found that same photo he gave me, back on my coffee table the next morning. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. The photo sat on my kitchen counter where I'd left it after finding it on the coffee table. I was afraid to touch it again, as if its yellowed edges might burn my fingers. I called the building management the day after Greg disappeared. "I'm trying to reach my neighbor," I explained, careful to keep my voice steady. "In 4B. 4B has been empty since the renovation," the woman said. "Are you sure you have the right unit?" "But I've seen him," I insisted. "Greg. Tall guy, early 40s, wears a hoodie." A long pause. "There's no Greg in our records, sir." I hung up and immediately went to the super's apartment on the ground floor. Ray had been around forever, knew everyone. He'd mentioned Greg once or twice, I was sure of it. Ray looked confused when I described Greg. "Don't know anyone fitting that description," he said, scratching his beard. "And I've been here 12 years. But he's lived next door to me for months." Unit 4B. Ray's expression changed from confusion to concern. 4B's been vacant since that water damage last year. We're still waiting on permits to renovate. I convinced him to check the apartment with me. When he unlocked the door, the stale air hit us immediately. The unit was completely empty. Dust sheets covered what little furniture remained. The closet, where Greg said he'd found the box, was empty except for a single wire hanger. "See?" Ray said. "Nobody's been living here." But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. In the corner of the room, barely visible against the baseboards, a small photograph. I picked it up while Ray wasn't looking. It showed a park I recognized a few blocks away. A family picnic, maybe from the 1990s based on the clothing. And there in the background, sitting on a bench reading a newspaper, was Greg. That night, I spread both photographs on my kitchen table, studying them under a bright lamp. The resemblance was undeniable. Same face, same posture. The Greg in these photos was identical to my neighbor, not just similar, but exactly the same. He hadn't aged between the 1980s photo and the 1990s one. I became obsessed. I started researching the building's history, scrolling through public records and old newspaper articles. Nothing about Greg. But I did find something strange. Over the past 50 years, the building had an unusually high turnover rate. People moved in, stayed briefly, then disappeared without explanation. 3 days after Greg's visit, exactly 72 hours, I heard sounds from 4B. Not just whispering this time, but a heavy dragging noise. I pressed my ear against the wall. Click. Whir. Static. Then voices, clinical and detached. Subject GR3447 deletion complete. Memory extraction successful. Moving to phase 4. I ran next door and pounded on 4B's door. No answer. I kept knocking until my knuckles bled. When I returned to my apartment, a small brown box sat in the center of my living room floor. I hadn't left it there. Inside were dozens of photographs of me. In places I'd never been. With people I'd never met. Dating back decades before I was born. At the bottom was a familiar note, resetting in 72 hours. Deletion scheduled. Thank you for your participation. The next morning, I packed a bag. I had to leave, get as far away as possible. As I reached for my door, someone knocked. 3 precise taps. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I'd never seen before. She wore a gray suit and held a clipboard. "We need to talk about Greg," she said through the door. "And about your upcoming reset." I didn't answer. "We can do this the easy way," she continued, her voice eerily calm. "Or we can extract you like we did with GR 3447. My hands trembled as I backed away from the door. The photographs were still spread across my kitchen table. In one, the newest one, I noticed something I'd missed before. Behind me was a calendar. Tomorrow's date was circled in red. The knocking continued, more insistent now. I still don't know what they want. What I am. Why I have memories of a life I'm increasingly certain I never lived. But I know this, I won't be here when they come back tomorrow. I'm leaving this account where someone might find it. If you're reading this and you live in apartment 4A at 1270, West Lake Avenue, run. Don't talk to your neighbors. Don't look too closely at your memories. And if someone named Greg knocks on your door at 3:07 a.m., don't answer. Because I don't think any of us are real. When I moved to the suburbs, I was looking for quiet. A reset. My divorce had just finalized, and I needed space. The house was older but charming, with a picket fence and a view of the woods. Best of all, the neighbors seemed nice. Especially the man next door, Thomas. He was in his late 50s. Kind, mild-mannered, always offering to help carry groceries or lend tools. We got into the habit of chatting at the mailbox. He told me he lived alone since his wife passed. He baked. Gave me cookies once. They were amazing. After a few months, he invited me over for dinner. Said it was his way of thanking me for being a good neighbor. I almost said no. I wish I had. His home was spotless. Cozy, even. Dinner was delicious. We talked about books, music, life. Nothing felt off until I asked where his wife had been buried. He paused. "Oh," he said softly, "she's still here." He smiled, like it was a joke. I laughed nervously. He didn't. After dessert, he excused himself to use the bathroom. I stood to stretch, looked around the room. That's when I noticed the corner of a doorframe, half hidden behind a shelf. It led to the basement. The door was cracked open. I don't know what made me look. Curiosity, instinct, maybe something darker. I crept down the stairs, one hand on the rail. It was cold. Smelled like damp earth and metal. The light was dim, but I could make out shelves, boxes, and something covered in a tarp. I pulled it back. There were mannequins. Dozens. Some dressed. Some not. All arranged around a single old armchair, where a woman's skeleton sat. Dressed in a wedding gown. I backed away, heart hammering in my chest. Something cracked under my shoe. I looked down, a Polaroid. It was me. At my mailbox. Smiling. Footsteps creaked above me. "You shouldn't have seen that," Thomas said softly, descending the stairs. I don't remember exactly how I got out. I ran, screamed, flagged down a passing car. The police arrived. But by the time they searched his house, everything was gone. The basement was empty. No mannequins. No skeleton. No Polaroids. Thomas vanished that night. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined it. But I still have that one photo. The one of me at the mailbox. And on the back, in neat handwriting, it says, "Next time, don't snoop." The police investigation lasted 3 weeks. Detective Morales, a tired woman with sharp eyes, interviewed me 6 times. Each session ended the same way, with her looking at me like I was either lying or crazy. "We found nothing," she repeated during our final meeting. "No evidence of mannequins, no sign of human remains. The basement shows no indication that anything was stored there recently." "But the photo," I started. "The photo proves nothing except that someone took your picture at your mailbox," she said. "It could have been anyone." But it wasn't anyone. It was Thomas. I knew it with the same certainty that I knew my own name. After the investigation closed, I almost sold my house. But something kept me there, a morbid curiosity, perhaps. Or a need for validation. I wasn't crazy. I knew what I'd seen. I started researching Thomas. His real name was Thomas Whitley. He'd lived in the neighborhood for only 4 years, not the decades he'd implied. Before that, there was no trace of him. As if he'd appeared from thin air. I visited the local historical society, scrolled through microfiche of old newspapers. The librarian, Mrs. Hanson, noticed my frustrated searching. "Looking for something specific?" she asked. I hesitated, then showed her Thomas's photo from the neighborhood directory. Her smile faltered. "Oh. Him. You know him?" She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Not personally. But there was a case, years ago. 1978, a man who looked just like him, could be his father, was questioned about his wife's disappearance. Nothing came of it. They moved away. She helped me find the article. The resemblance was uncanny. The man's name was Edward Whitley. His wife, Catherine, had vanished without a trace. The photo showed Edward standing stoically before their suburban home, the same floor plan as Thomas's house, but in a different town. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the skeleton in the wedding dress. About Thomas's words, "She's still here." A week later, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a small box wrapped in silver paper and a card that read, "A housewarming gift from a neighbor." My hands trembled as I unwrapped it. Inside was a porcelain figurine of a woman in a wedding dress, her face painted with delicate features and a serene smile. At the bottom was an inscription, "Catherine, 1978. I dropped it. The head broke off, rolling across my kitchen floor. That night, I heard noises from next door. Thomas's house had remained empty since his disappearance, the property tied up in police investigations and legal limbo. But I distinctly heard footsteps. A door opening and closing. I called Detective Morales. She sent a patrol car, but they found nothing. "The house is still sealed," the officer told me. "No one's been inside." 2 days later, Mrs. Hanson called me. Her voice was urgent. "I found something else. Edward Whitley wasn't the first. There was another case in 1962. Different name, same face. Same story, wife disappeared." "How is that possible?" I asked. "I don't know. But there's something else. In all 3 cases, 1962, 1978, and now, there was a new neighbor. A recent divorcee who moved in next door." The line went silent as the implication sank in. That night, I packed a bag. I couldn't stay in that house another night. As I was loading my car, I noticed something on my porch, a freshly baked cookie on a plate with a note, "I've missed our chats at the mailbox." I left town that night and never returned. I changed my name, moved across the country. But sometimes, when I get my mail, I feel eyes watching me. And occasionally, new neighbors bring cookies to welcome me to the neighborhood. I never eat them. And I never, ever look in their basements.